to Beyond Well with Sheila Hamilton. This is a program for people who want to learn more about our interior lives. And every week we talk to someone who has had an extraordinary experience, either with recovery or with continued struggle with mental health problems, or in the case of Csaba Mera, somebody who has toiled his entire life to make a dream come true that is finally hit the big screen. He's a former pediatrician and healthcare administrator, and his first produced script became a critically acclaimed motion picture. You might be saying that Csaba is living an overnight success, but as most filmmakers know, Here a While was actually years in the making, and today we're going to talk with him about the unique circumstance of being a creative and a physician during COVID, and at the same time, the incredible topic that he's taken on in his incredible film, Here a While. Csaba, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Sheila.
I want to talk a little bit about your background because I don't know very many people who have come from Hungary. I want to hear a little bit about what it was like growing up there.
So, yes, I was born in Hungary, and my dad was a physician. And in 1956, Hungary had a revolution, try to escape from the Soviet Union. It didn't work, and so we escaped in the middle of the night. We ended up in Austria for a few months and got on the British quota. Each country took so many refugees, and we ended up going to Great Britain, where my dad, over a period of 3 years, completed all of his recertification that the British government required. And then he practiced as a trauma surgeon there for a number of years. And so it was interesting. I went to an all-boys grammar school with the uniform and the tie and everything, and I loved it.
How old were you when you were taken away from your homeland?
Oh, I was 7 years old, and we walked in the middle of the night. We walked in November, end of November, walked across the border with my mom and my brother. My dad had gone ahead. Every 15 minutes or so, flares would go up because the Russians were looking for refugees trying to escape, and you'd hear gunfire. And so whenever the flares went up, we had to hit the ground.
Oh my gosh.
And then, it took about 7 hours of just walking and struggling through. But yeah, and the Austrians were just amazing. And the British too were just amazing in how helpful and welcoming they were to us refugees. So.
Wow, so the political times must be so potent for you with your own personal story set against this backdrop of so much divisiveness around immigrants.
Yeah, oh yeah, it is. And part of me obviously has very strong feelings about how we should treat our fellow humans, who are struggling. So.
Especially also as a physician, you take that oath to do no harm. And I love that you have been able to marry both the creativity of screenwriting with this beautiful act of selflessness and aid to other human beings as a physician. Did you tell me about how you started adding in screenwriting to your accolades?
Okay. So I was practicing pediatrics in Irvine, Southern California, in Orange County. I was actually on staff at the University of California at Irvine as an assistant professor, and then I admitted to Children's Hospital of Orange County, and a wonderful experience with colleagues. And I was also a pediatric hematologist oncologist, so I treated children and babies with cancer and leukemia and so on. And my mom was she was a young teenage actor in Hungary. And she was very talented. And then when we came over to Britain, she also did a few little things. So I sort of inherited, I guess, part of that need to do creative stuff. Mm-hmm. And so while I was in Irvine practicing pediatrics, I went to the Irvine Community College and took a screenwriting class from Terry Black.
Wow.
And his brother, Shane Black, came and taught a couple of the classes. Shane has done some huge movies. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I wrote a screenplay about these brothers who escaped from Hungary, and it was called The Corbin Battalion. And I did a lot of research for it on actual things that happened because there were a lot of kids who were in the revolution, teenagers who were actually fighting, and ended up some of them getting killed and so on. So that was my initial try. And then after that, I wrote another screenplay called City Kids. And that was about, again, I read an article in the LA Times about these amazing kids who have the most horrible family backgrounds, but there's something in their soul, in their spirit, that just keeps them going and helps them be successful. And this story, City Kids, was about a teenager who is shot in a drive-by shooting. He ends up in the hospital. They take care of him. This one Dr. Tate is particularly caring for him, but nobody ever visits him. And then one day he just disappears, and the doctor figures out how to follow him and finds out. Then the bottom line of the story is this teenager, 15, 16-year-old, is looking after his two younger siblings. Mom is dead, dad's in prison, and it's how they try to survive and how this doctor tries to help out.
Wow.
So this one got some attention from a movie producer who wrote South Central, Michael Spielberg. No relationship to Steven. So he was shopping this around in Hollywood. It was going to get some attention. He developed cancer, went back home to New York, and died. And so that was my second go. And he was a wonderful guy. Then I moved up to Portland. And in Portland, I took some classes at the Northwest Film Center, which was a lot of fun. Everything, documentaries and all sorts of things. Oh, and I was also on the board of Janus Youth Programs. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Of course I have, yeah.
Yeah, so I was on the board for like 10 years. I was president of the board for a couple of years. And meanwhile, I was a physician executive at Moda Health and then later at Cambia. So based on my sort of experience at Janus, I wrote a screenplay about these two sisters who have a horrible home situation and they run away, and it's about homeless teenagers and their experience. And again, a ER doctor who tries to help them. Anyway, so we had everything lined up: shooting schedule, cast, crew, budget, and 3 weeks before that, the studio that was going to have us use all of their equipment and do post-production went bankrupt. So I thought at that point, maybe I should put this whole business on hold.
One of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you today was this resilience that you've shown through all of the rejections, the trips, the fallouts of attempting to try to maintain good storytelling, and the fact that you took on Oregon's Death with Dignity Act and really infused it with the kind of life and nuance and complexity that I think it deserves is really the reason I said, I got to meet this guy. I was a young reporter, and I was one of the first to cover, one of the first people to avail themselves of the Death with Dignity Act. And of course, there was all the doomsday scenarios where people were saying that people were going to move to Oregon to die, and people were going to, and Csaba, what is so fascinating for me as a reporter is just now, decades later, to look back and just say how much comfort this law has given so many terminally ill people, and how few people really, in terms of numbers, have actually availed themselves of it.
And in the way the detractors are calling it assisted suicide. They'll say it's suicide and suicide is wrong and you shouldn't help people to do it. But that's not what it is, first of all. And what it's about is giving people the option, the choice to say, since I've been there as a physician with these poor little kids on tubes and respirators and whatever, just gasping the last, and I try to make them as comfortable as possible, but that's just not something as a human adult you should have to say, this is the only way I can leave under these circumstances. And so that's what it's about. And the thing that impressed me about that, having been a pediatrician and a pediatric oncologist, I can tell you about one of the little children who had leukemia. We treated for 2.5 years. Things seemed to be okay, and then just relapsed. And we tried a couple more things, and nothing was working. And this was the end for her. And so I had this was back in like 1988, 89 in Southern California. So I had this conversation with the parents, and I said, look, here are the options. We can just keep going with trying things. There's nothing that will work at this point that's been shown to work. And she's just going to pass along, and but the options are that you can take her home, and I'll give you medicine to make her comfortable, or we admit her to the hospital. She'll have IVs. You'll just sort of sit there now and then and chat with her, and they chose to take her home. And so I did home visits. I gave them some Roxanol, which is it's a very strong pain medicine, and it was amazing. Mom would hold her, and she'd feel comfortable, and that's how she died. And the parents.
Csaba, I can't imagine.
The parents were just so grateful, and as a matter of fact, they had another baby after that, and we had lunch a couple times after that, and I've always had sort of this sort of compassion for what parents are going through, and it ruins some marriages. It's really terrible.
Yeah.
But they've always sent me Christmas cards and pictures of their kids as they're growing up, because fortunately quite a few of them made it just fine. And but it was a wonderful experience. And anyway, having that background and then also understanding that Oregon was leading the way since 1994 in trying to bring some sense to this, with the understanding that even when, and as a matter of fact, this is in the ending part of the movie, this is sort of, the doctor explains this, that many people don't even fill the special prescription. And then people who fill the prescription, which would quietly, peacefully end one's life, often they don't take it. But the fact that they have had the dignity to be respected, to be able to choose how they end their life, it has made this huge difference.
And I understand from talking with some people, especially loved ones who have availed themselves of the choice, the reason for the delay is that there is less anxiety and there is less panic around the suffering when they know that they can eventually end their suffering. It's so huge to me that people understand that nuance, that people aren't rushing to do this, that there's not a single case of a person getting the prescription and doing it on the same day. They often wait weeks, months, sometimes even years to be able to just have the assurance that when they're ready, it will be their time, their decision. I love that. So talk to me about the kismet that allowed you signed on a really, really good actor just based on the strength of the writing. And in Hollywood, that seems to send a message to everyone like, hey, let's get this done, right? So then it was super fast, I understand.
Yeah, everything happened really, really fast. So I connected with Tim True, who was the director on this movie. And Tim and I go way back because I was the first non-actor board member of Third Rail Repertory Theater in Portland. They came out with an amazingly successful recent tragic events play at the Coho Theater. And I bought like 80 tickets and brought all my friends, and because I thought it was so fabulous. And they said, well, we keep seeing you showing up. Could you be on our board? I said, well, who's on your board? I said, well, it's us, 4 of us. Anyway, so that's how I met Tim. A few years ago, he moved down here to California. He's been in a bunch of TV series and spots in movies and so forth. And so he and I connected, and we formed a little company called True Lime Entertainment. And we said, hey, let's create some stuff, because we're both kind of crazy that way. So we talked about a couple of things, but then I approached the author of The Enchanted, Portland writer, a wonderful book. She's a death row investigator.
Oh, you're speaking about Renee, such a good friend of mine. Yeah.
So Renee, I chatted with Renee. I said, oh, I love this book. This would be either a fabulous 6-part series, or it could be a movie. So I pounded out the script and sent it to her. And meanwhile, her new book was coming out, The Child Finder. And so her New York agent said, nah, you don't want to do that. We know people in Hollywood. Needless to say, I was a bit disappointed. She was totally on board, but she said, I have to listen to my agents and all that stuff. So this was like, I think, November of 2017. So then I said to Tim, Tim, I got this idea. I'm gonna put together a screenplay, and I want you to help me give me feedback. So in 10 days, I pounded out this screenplay, which is now here a while. I sent it to him, and we went back and forth. And I said, look, why don't you come on officially as a co-writer? Because then I get your sense he's done a lot of directing in the theater circuit and also as an actor. And we can just, really mold it to make it a really good product. So we did that. Then we brought on, so this was like January, February. And then in March, we brought on Deborah Smith, who is our producer, one of our co-producers. And at that point, it was Deborah Smith and Alyssa Rohrenbeck. And so we brought them on, and we were talking about, I wonder if there's any way we can get some name actor, like even just barely recognizable. And I said, well, to do that, you really need to have a casting director. So Tim actually knew a casting director from his contacts here. And this person said, I'm really busy, but there's this really brilliant casting director in Chicago, Brittany Ward. And so we connected with her. Now we're talking April. And then, so we connected. She loved it. She said, every time we sent the script out, we heard back like 2 hours later or something. So she's brilliant. She puts together these lists with their pictures, with little bylines and likelihood, different colors. So it's the likelihood of getting them.
Oh yeah, cool.
Somewhat remote and so on. Anyway, long story short, the script was sent out to a number of agents. And so Anna Camp, Pitch Perfect, and Good Girls Riot, and a number of other, she said, I have to do this movie. And she came to us. And then same thing happened with Joel Latrulio. He said, these are two comedic actors, and they wanted to do this very serious
film. So I want to ask you about your own potential knowledge, your own bias regarding the Death with Dignity Act, and what you brought to it. Was there anything that you inserted in this movie that challenged your belief about that particular way of?
I think that's what we put in there. We wanted to have the other point of view clearly articulated. And that's what happens early on in the movie when Anna tells her brother, she comes back. By the way, there are quite a few themes in this movie, some of them based on my life and so on. She is gay, and she was thrown out by her dad. It's been a really tough life, and so she comes back to Portland to reconnect with her estranged brother. But the main reason she's coming back is she wants to take the Death with Dignity Act option. So when she explains to him that she wants to do this, he goes absolutely ballistic. She says, because after we've been apart, we're trying to connect, and now you want to, and he says, you want to commit suicide in my house, in my bed. And then their mom, she says, wasn't mom enough? Because, and my mother committed suicide when I was 16 years old. And so his very strong opposition for about half of the movie presents the other point of view.
That's wonderful that you had the courage to do that, because, otherwise it would come off as a propaganda piece and probably just too linear in terms of your own point of view. I'm really pleased that you allowed yourself that freedom to do it. Did you learn anything new? Was there something insightful seeing these actors actually bring this to life about this option for you?
In doing the research, I worked with Kate Morris, who was an OHSU oncology surgeon, now working in Oklahoma. And she was actually in a documentary movie, How to Die in Oregon, which was about the Dignity Act. And then Dr. Richard Blank, who's currently still at OHSU and has been involved with patients taking this option. So one of the things I learned was I wanted to make sure that we got all the facts right. And that's why it was very important to hear some of the information that Dr. Morris had shared with me come from the acting doctor, making it very clear that some people never fill the medicine. Some people fill it, but they just it's a reassurance. It's there if I really want to go through with this, it's there. And maybe as they get closer to dying, they're not suffering so much, and they don't want to take the medicine. So they change their minds. And the doctor says in the movie, she says, it's okay to change your mind. And so I think that's one of the key elements that I learned was, hey, this isn't just, you're going to do the death with dignity thing. You better do it. Right. That's not what this is about.
Yeah.
This is about having choice and having respect as a human being and the dignity to be able to make a choice.
I want to just bring in the reality right now of most people's point of view and their attitude and their level of well-being, and the rates of depression have skyrocketed. We're seeing an almost 3 times increase in the suicide rate. And I know that COVID is just putting an enormous pressure on the mental health system. How have you been coping with it, given you're attempting to try to get the word out about a very well-meaning, beautifully produced project, and people are kind of in a mode that they can't hear anything that's not comedy?
When we first put the script together, this was a year before. The COVID thing was just, we weren't even thinking along those lines. And then we're getting the cast during the shoot, afterwards, the film festivals, because we went to several film festivals, and even the most recent, which was the first couple of weeks of March, was in Nebraska, and we actually won, the Nebraska Film Festival Best Feature. Even then, it wasn't clear what's going to happen. And then as COVID started just skyrocketing, and then we had all the social injustice protests and all the other issues that are going on right now, Tim and Deborah and I, we just sort of recognized that this isn't a movie where you'll have this huge weekend where everybody's rushing to see here a while. Hopefully we'll be out there and sort of be seen later on when things settle down and people want to know about it. And the thing that's going to push that, by the way, right now there are 10 states in the United States that have legislation in place that allow this, which means there are about 40 of them that don't, and there are about 20 of them where there is currently legislation being crafted to try and allow it with all the rules that apply, etc. It's about a topic that's going to be relevant for the next 5 years easily. And so, it'll get seen. I don't think we'll make our money back, but that's not why we made this movie. It wasn't that wasn't the intention. It was about a message. It was about a story.
Well, Csaba, I have been so delighted to get to know you. And if all I can do is through word of mouth, tell people, find this, put it in your search engine on Netflix or Hulu or wherever it is that you watch movies. Incredibly beautiful, thoughtful film. I'm so glad to know you, Csaba, and I wish you all the best with your filmmaking career and your pediatrician career.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Sheila.